think, okay, well now I need to pray for sanctification and hope it takes this time. And so I would do that, and I would find myself, by the time I was like 8th grade, 9th grade, I would find myself praying multiple times a day. Find myself, I had this terrible thought again, or I did this, lashed out at my mother. I've sinned again, and so I need to pray for forgiveness. I kind of go off in a quiet place in the house and pray for sanctification. And then a couple hours later, it happened all over again. And I really became depressed about this and got to the point where I would pray these things and I'd almost wish I'd just die right in that moment. That way God would just take me and it'd be done. I could be assured that I was going to heaven and I didn't need to fear hellfire. And so that was very much a part of my childhood. Now, my parents, this probably sounds pretty, what I've described so far just now probably sounds pretty fierce and unmerciful, and there probably is a degree of truth to that. My parents, for their part, they tried to counsel me about these things because I would go talk to them about it, keep them up late at night trying to figure these things out, and they would say, well, you know, God's not looking to strike you down the moment you sin. But the problem was, that seemed right in my heart, but that's not what our church was teaching me. Our church was teaching me, no, you can lose your salvation and it happens the instant you sin, and sanctification should be instantaneous, completely done, and then you shouldn't sin anymore, and here I am doing all these things. So I had all of these conflicting things going on, where it seemed to me true that what Mom and Dad said was right, that God's not looking to strike me down the instant I do something wrong, that God's merciful. And maybe in a moment of providence or something, I don't know, my mom said to me one night, I didn't think too much of it at the time, but my mom said to me one night, you know, you're acting like a Catholic. You're always praying for forgiveness and confessing, and she meant it to be like this thing where you're not doing it shouldn't be that way, right? And I was confused by that because it seemed to me that I probably shouldn't be a Catholic. I didn't know much about Catholicism, really. It wasn't even on the map of our theological radar. We were Protestants and pretty exclusive about it too in my particular church. That's probably why it was so small of a denomination. And so Catholicism sounded so far away from us that it wasn't even on my radar. And when my mom said that, I was a little confused by it because on the one hand, it seemed like I should be confessing. On the other hand, it didn't seem like a good thing that I was acting like a Catholic. So I don't think I thought too much of it. But for some reason, I've always remembered that, and it's come back to me here as an adult, that memory. Kind of a first glimmer of my journey toward Catholicism. Well, okay. So, I think over time, I became more aware of God's mercy and sort of learned to live with the tension that I had going on with these theological beliefs I had, yet believing that God was merciful. And as high school progressed, I came out of this phase and was able to live in God's mercy more fully. Two incidents that happened in college that I wanted to share. And this was when I was at Mount Vernon Nazarene, so a Protestant university. I remember my sophomore year, I woke up one morning and I had a paper due, I think, later that day. So I started working on my paper some more, climbed out of bed, started working on my paper, and it was for a philosophy class, and I'd been reading a Christian theologian, a guy named Dennis Kinlaw, who happened to be president of Asbury University over in Wilmore, Kentucky, another historically Wesleyan university. And this man ended up becoming very influential on my life and how to understand God's love, sanctification. Well, I don't remember what the paper was about. I don't remember what I was writing about. But as I was writing this paper, I suddenly had come over me this overwhelming sense of God's love. And I might be the first person in human history who had this sense while writing a paper for a college class. But that is what happened to me. And I think I began to weep. And I just had this tremendous sense of God's love. And I'm kind of a skeptical person by nature. That's why I'm a philosopher, I guess. And when I think back over why that happened, I think, well, I didn't eat anything weird. I'd gotten rest. And my best explanation is that Jesus met me at that moment and washed his love over me, so it became a very real thing. And then the second thing, later that same school year, this same gentleman, Kinlaw, came and spoke at my university, gave a series of sermons, lectures, kind of things. And my philosophy professor really wanted me to meet this man and made it a point to introduce me to him after one of his sermons. And so I walked down to the front of the auditorium at my university to meet him, and for a minute or two I observed him talking to some other students. And I was struck by the amount of genuine love of Christ this man was able to pour out to the people that he didn't even know, really, first time he'd met any of them, in his short interaction with them. And as I came forward and then I got to introduce myself, I had that same feeling wash over me of Christ's love. And I began to tear up. And I came away from that moment thinking, man, that's what I need. I need that. Whatever he has, I need that. And I want that because I don't have it right now. And I think, part of my journey has been experiencing very godly people in the Protestant tradition. And they haven't come to this place where I am of almost ready to be confirmed into the Catholic Church this spring. But they were very faithful people, and I owe them a debt for introducing Christ to me and Christ's love. So those were two incidents that really confirmed me in my faith, I think. Now, one thing I haven't said anything about is baptism and what my church taught about baptism. This ended up becoming a significant thing in my change of heart towards Catholicism. I was baptized at the age of 14, even though I'd grown up in the church, because my particular church did not believe that infants should be baptized. Now, you go to some Protestant churches do believe that infants can be baptized. My wife grew up in the Methodist church, and they baptized infants. She was baptized as an infant, and this actually became a point of conflict while we were dating. She was okay with infant baptism. I was not okay with infant baptism. And I wasn't really sure why she was okay with infant baptism, because it just seemed obvious to me, at least from the tradition that I'd grown up in, that you shouldn't be baptized before you're able to actually be aware of the fact that you're choosing your faith, right? You should at least understand what's going on. And she wasn't very moved by this, but I don't think she ever really explained why she wasn't really moved by this. So I wasn't very satisfied with this. So it led to a little bit of tension. But one day I was talking to a cousin of mine who was choosing to baptize his children as infants. He was Protestant, but he was choosing to do this. And I was confused by this, and I asked him, why would you baptize your children, your babies as an infant? Why would you do that whenever they aren't able to choose the faith for themselves? And he kind of threw it back on me, challenged me a little bit, and he said, well, how did he put it? He said, if baptism doesn't do something, suppose it's just in our faith it was taught that it was just a symbol. Baptism is just a symbol. It's a symbol of the reality that you have chosen to accept Christ into your life. But that's all it is. It's just a mere symbol. Now, we thought it was important. We always practiced it, and it was a significant thing. I don't know quite why we thought it was so significant, since it doesn't really affect any change in you, but we thought it was significant. And he said, okay, suppose that that's the case. Why do we need to do this? Why is it so important? Why do we receive commandments to baptize?